Tara, we are live. You can start.
Yeah.
Suraj.
So, a warm good morning to everyone who has taken your time from your Saturday morning and joined us for this webinar on Digital Ethics Committee. Is this the way forward in India? Myself, Sarah, working in Quinary Clinical Research, to be your host for today's event. I'm happy to have you all to this webinar organized by Quinary Clinical Research in collaboration with Indian Society for Clinical Research. Indian Society for Clinical Research provides a forum for exchange of information and learning for all those who are engaged in the field of clinical research. ISCR also aims to build awareness for clinical research as a specialty in India and also facilitates its growth while helping it achieve higher standards of quality and ethics, wherein Quinary Clinical Research is a budding organization enabling the ethics committees in India work effectively. Quinary is the first to coin the term of Ethics Committee Management Organization with the basis of digitalization in clinical research, and it believes that this will help all the stakeholders in clinical research. Together with a vision to build clinical research as a future capacity in India, this webinar is an endeavor for this vision. And now, as we begin, I would like to inform you that there's an agenda available on your screen, and we also have a bio sketch on all our distinguished panelists for you if you wish to go through them. And in between the session, if you are asked to give your opinion on any of the poll question, which you will be definitely asked, please give your response by using the poll option. And if any of you have questions for any of our panelists, please share them through the option question, ask question, and we are happy to answer your questions in the given timeline. And now it's time to begin, and I'm privileged to introduce one of our expert panelists of today's event, Dr. Chirag Trivedi, President of Indian Society for Clinical Research. Dr. Chirag is a Senior Director and Head of Clinical Studies Unit at Sanofi, overseeing the sites in India and Southeast Asia. He is working with Sanofi for nearly 18 years, holding various roles in the organization. His experience is not limited to clinical research but also extends to pharmacovigilance and business development. He is currently working as a president for Indian Society for Clinical Research since 2017. We are very happy to have Dr. Chirag on our panel today. And now, may I request Dr. Chirag to take over and give the initial opening remark. Dr. Chirag, please.
Thank you, Sarah, for the kind introduction, and good morning, everybody. I want to compliment Mr. Rakesh Dajania for having this event, Dr. Shubro Jyoti for getting this idea of having digital ethics committee. It's an excellent idea and a theme which is very pertinent for the times that we are into today. It's a very cliched statement that the pandemic has changed our lives, but it's clearly an understatement. It's changed and affected us in many, many ways. So clinical research also has been impacted. And there are many positive developments, if I may say, because of the pandemic. We had a lot of foray into the digitalization of clinical things. A lot of technology has already been built in, and that has come to help us. We all know that the vaccine development has crunched from maybe 8 to 10 years to 8 to 10 months now. So obviously, a lot of things have gone into it. Where the digital technology has made a good foray for all of us, and it's here to stay. So things that were considered as luxury earlier probably have become a necessity today, and digital is going to be the key for tomorrow. ISCR has always been in the forefront of being a part of any of the changes and giving meaningful inputs to the policymakers as well. Be it when we talked about the regulatory changes that we had from 2013 onwards or so. Even for having digital technology in the country, ISCR in fact in 2019 or so, when we had we carved out a short-term, mid-term, and long-term vision for ISCR for promoting clinical research in India, for capability building, capacity building, shaping the environment. One of our long-term objective was to have more of digital thing, but thanks to the pandemic, this has got advanced now, and we want to be a part of that so that we can have more digital things, not only for the ethics committee, which is a question today, but also at the sites. A lot of patient data. We're talking about a lot of real world evidence things now, and that's data which is going to come in. A lot of analytics that is going to be built in. So all these things is really going to help us. And I am happy that the theme that chosen today by Quinary Clinical and Dr. Shubro, digital ethics company, that will really help us speeding up things, and that's going to be the most important. So we'll have a lot of good discussions on it. I want to thank the fellow panelists here who have been chosen. They are the experts in their own field, and they're going to share with us a lot of good experience. So thank you all, and ISCR is happy to be a partner for this uh, very important meeting today. Thank you. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Dr. Chirag, for welcoming us and setting the stage for today's event. And now I take immense pleasure in introducing our moderator for today's session, Dr. Subrajyoti Bhaumik. Dr. Subrajyoti is an MD Pharmacology and currently working as the clinical director at Peerless Hospital and BK Roy Research Center, Kolkata. He has more than 12 years of experience in the field of clinical research and vigilance and medication management. He has worked in Stanford University for 3 years and also has relative certifications in the field from Stanford and Johns Hopkins University. He is a member of ethics committee in more than two ethics committees and also a chairperson in institutional ethics committee. He is also the NABS assessor for ethics committees in India. We are very happy to have you, sir. And now, may I invite Dr. Subrajyoti to take the lead from here? Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone, and good evening to Deborah, who's joining us all the way from California in the United States. So, good evening to Deborah. Good morning to one and all. And at the outset, let me first thank every one of you for taking out your precious time and coming here and being with us for this very important discussion on Digital Ethics Committee. I think the ball has been set rolling by Chirag, where he said that things which used to be luxury in India a few years back has now become a reality thanks to this unpleasant pandemic. At the outset, let me first thank ISCR and the leadership of ISCR led by Dr. Chirag Trivedi, who has always helped us and promoted any kind of capacity building in this country. So thank you, Chirag. Thank you, leadership team at ISCR, for always augmenting clinical research capacity building in the country. We are Today is a very important day because we are going to discuss on something where we are going to bring in experts from India who have done the digital ethics committee, who've been participating in digital ethics committee functioning in India. And we have an expert all the way from United States who has been part and parcel of functioning in a digitalized environment in the institutional review board, as they call them in their own country in the United States. So it's my pleasure, and I'm very happy that my mentor in Stanford University, Deborah Kenny, has made her time available, and she's going to share her experience of what digital ethics committees can offer and has been offering in a great institution like Stanford University School of Medicine. Without much ado, it is my pleasure to introduce the guest of honor, Professor Urmila Thatte. She doesn't require an introduction. She is the mother of clinical research and clinical trials in India. And Madam Thatte, we are very honored. May I ask the organizers to pull up a slide because it's customary to introduce her. So please pull up the slide for introducing Madam Thatte, though she doesn't require an introduction. Professor Urmila Thatte is an MD, PhD. She's emeritus professor of the Department of Clinical Pharmacology at KEM Hospital, Mumbai. She has over 30 years of experience of teaching, academics, clinical trials. She's a member secretary of FERCI in India, which has taken the lead for capacity building and also improving the functioning of institutional ethics committees in India, and serves on scientific advisory committees as chairman and pharmacology expert. And she's the pharmacology expert of ICMR. Madam, as I mentioned, was a former professor and head of Department of Clinical Pharmacology at the prestigious St. G.S. Medical College and KM Hospital in Mumbai. She chairs the ethics committees of Mumbai hospitals, and she is also serving at the National Ethics Committee of NACO and the Institutional Ethics Committee of and the Independent Ethics Committee of KEM Hospital. She has over 220 publications in national and international journals, 20 chapters in various books on clinical pharmacology. She is the recipient of the prestigious Dr. K.N. Udappa Award for Excellence in Research and Excellence in Drug Research Award. Madam, we are very, very honored that you have accepted the invitation, and we look forward to your beginning presentation in few moments from now. May I now take the privilege to introduce Ms. Deborah Kenny, who is our international expert. Deborah Kenny is the research manager at Stanford University, USA. She is a biomechanist and analytical chemist and occupational therapist. And she wears multiple hats, and that she is going to talk about when she discusses her experience. She is an ardent medical researcher at Stanford and the Veteran Affairs Palo Alto for last 26 years. She has been the research manager at the Stanford's Department of Orthopedic Surgery since last 8 years. And I must add here that whatever clinical trials I learned in Stanford, I owe it to Deborah. So thank you, Deborah, for guiding me back at Stanford. She oversees and coordinates research studies in the department, and she's a departmental resource expert and mentor. Truly, she's a mentor of people who are working in that particular department. Thank you, Deborah, for joining us. I know it's quite late. It's been a hectic day for you, but thank you joining us late at night from California. Our next panelist is Mr. Tapan Kumar Shah. He is an old friend at Pfizer, and currently he is director of clinical operation at AstraZeneca since 2018. He has worked as regional clinical operation therapy area lead and clinical trial monitor at Boehringer for quite a lot of time. He has played pivotal role as CRA for to project management at Pfizer and multiple other multinational companies. Thank you, Tapan, for joining us today. Our next panelist is Miss Priyadarshini Irabam. She's a PhD. She has an academic background. She's currently the General Manager Academics and Clinical Research at the Multi-Speciality Batra Hospital and Medical Research Center in New Delhi. She has over 15 years of experience covering academics, training, industry exposure, developing clinical research sites, and managing clinical trial sites. She has been the clinical research operation head at Pan India level at Fortis hospitals, and she has expertise in developing clinical programs. She's an ardent academician, and she has won a lot of prizes in the international arena as well as national arena. And we are going to hear about her experience of using Digital Ethics Committee at her center. Thank you, Priyadarshini, for being here today. Our final panelist is Mr. Rakesh Dadania. He is working as the executive director at Quinary, and it's a startup which is specialized in digitalization of ethics committee. And this has been his brainchild, and he has over 18 years of experience in clinical trials at CRO and sponsor level in India. His core areas are project management of early phase studies, also BAB studies and biosimilar studies. Prior to starting Quinary clinical research, he was at Dr. Reddy's lab, where he worked at a leadership position. He's an active member of the South chapter of the Indian Society for Clinical Research and an active member of the Indian Pharmacy Association as well. So thank you, Rakesh, for putting this together and working with Indian Society for Clinical Research for this very important webinar. So ladies and gentlemen, without waiting much time, may I now it's my honor to invite Professor Urmila Thatte to give her opening remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Supro. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you're
This
audible.
is this
Yes, ma'am,
is
you're audible.
usually Okay, I'll share my screen because if you allow, I have a few slides.
Absolutely, ma'am. Over to you, please.
Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am. You can just, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Perfect.
So first of all, let me congratulate ISCR and Quinary for making this, planning this webinar. I think this is extremely topical, and I think it was relevant whatever situation we were in, but being in the pandemic has made it even more relevant. And I want to start this presentation or these words of the guest of honor, as Subro has kindly called me, with an introduction to the national guidelines that the ICMR came out with in April 2020. I think this was one of the first guidelines that came out from the national body uh, to deal with COVID-19 pandemic and how should ethics committees deal with it. And I want to highlight a few things. One of the most important things that is said in this is that ethics committees must prioritize research review based on the urgency and take steps to facilitate review. So it is very important that we do these reviews in a timely manner. We cannot allow delays to happen, and there are ways in which the ICMR has allowed us to do this, and that is by doing virtual or tele web conferences. I think this is the first time that a national guideline, has allowed us to do this. In the previous guidelines, it was always said that a physical one-to-one meeting is generally recommended, and online discussions were discouraged because it was felt that an online presentation would not work. But here, because of the pandemic, these virtual meetings have been encouraged, in fact. And in fact, it was also said in this guideline that preliminary research procedures, including but not restricted to data and biological sample collections that may rapidly deteriorate or perish, may be allowed while the ethics committee review process is underway. So this it has really been a progressive guideline. What is more important is submission of e-copy of research protocol and relevant documents is encouraged. Electronic documents may be accepted for review and timelines shortened. And video virtual conferences, as I mentioned, for meetings should be encouraged. I think we should take this into consideration and therefore alter our SOPs so that we are able to meet the challenges of the current times. Now, I just want to share with you some things that we developed as a project with FERCI and PATH, which we co-developed. This was introduced in 2017 by the then ICMR DG, who was Dr. Soumya Swaminathan then. She released these software in the FERCAP meeting, FERCI FERCAP meeting that happened in Delhi. The CDSA and the MRC at the University College London joined this effort in 2019, and they are now, this software is based over there. And the core software that I wanted to talk to you about is Electronic Ethics Committee, or EEC as we call it, which is an online ethics application platform. It has been designed in accordance with the national guidelines, ethical guidelines, the NDCT rules, and the FERCI SOPs for ECs. One of the major challenges that we face in ethics committee was that they were very laborious procedures, very paper intensive. I remember the time when I was chairman of Tata Ethics Committee, and I remember I used to think that I'm doing a weightlifting competition, taking these huge dossiers to and fro from home to the committee meeting, and going through these also used to be a hugely intensive thing. And institutions also have to spend a lot of money, and I cannot even talk about the effect on the environment in terms of the amount of trees that we probably waste in making the paper. Now, this EEC is a software which is available. This is currently being made available free of cost. I'll tell you about whom to contact if you are interested. But it may need a subscription later on because we obviously will entail some expenses as we go along. There are, for example, this will be your institution, which will have its own page, and it is quite well password protected, and there is no cross fertilization of data. There are firewalls between institutions, and every person within that institution also has their own page, dashboard. So the investigator can fill in with an ICMR common form, which makes it very easy. And a lot of this information is remembered, so you don't have to refill it each time. Then there is the IEC administrator who has a dashboard. The member secretary has a separate dashboard. None of these can see each other's. The passwords are different. And if you are a EC member, you will be able to see the dashboard of a member. This dashboard, for example. So all projects will be accessible to you. If anybody is interested in this, you're welcome to contact at these. I will just hold this slide for a minute. I'm done with my presentation. And I hope this gives all of you encouragement to go in for an electronic ethics committee. It is the time, it is absolutely the need of the hour. There is no discussion about it. There are no two thoughts that go behind this. You have to do this for various advantages. There is no two answers to the question that is asked in the title of this seminar. Is this the way forward? It is the way forward. It is the way forward. The Digital Ethics Committee is the way forward. There are no doubts in my mind. And I know my senior citizenship is quite evident with my white hair now. And even though I am an ancient relic of humanity, I think I would like to emphasize that it is very important that we all become as digitalized as possible. And I do understand that many of the senior members in ethics committees are reluctant to accept these new technologies, but I don't think so. If you just talk to your children or your grandchildren, they will teach you how to do this, and it is really not so challenging after you just do it a couple of times. And it is extremely easy to communicate. I used to think it's difficult to talk to my kitchen. For example, I'm talking to my roses just now instead of talking to human beings, because that is how I'm used to talking. But I thought it would be very difficult to talk when I'm on a webinar. But it is not so difficult. It is something you get used to. And all you need is an open mind. And I request each and every one of you to have an open mind. Do not go into this saying this is some new generation things which I cannot do. That is a closed mind. Do not do that. I think you can all do it. We can all do it. And India especially, because India is the country where software and computers have made a name for themselves in the world. I think we can definitely show. And even if we are old fogies who really don't think we can do anything new, I think we can all do this. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, ma'am. I think those were very encouraging opening remarks, but we will request you to be with us because we will require your expert comments throughout the discussion because
Yeah, I'll be here.
As they say, the show is about to begin. So let's move to our next panelist, our international expert, Deborah Kenny, who's going to give us an overview of the IRB, Institutional Review Board, functioning at Stanford University School of Medicine. Over to you, Deborah. You are muted, Deborah. You have to unmute yourself, please.
First slide, please. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. I really appreciate you making the effort to be here. So I have worked with Stanford physicians for doing research and as a clinician for over 26 years. So I've seen it go from paper into the electronic age, and it's really not so scary. So we've been using electronic submission at Stanford for 17 years. It started with a slow rollout of the platform, and so that it was by who wanted to do it first, and we weren't asking for renewals to be done that way. And then as it went on through the next year, the second year, any new protocol needed to be submitted at that point through eProtocol, and then slowly we added in the addition of all the renewals for the protocols being that way. Are my slides up, by the way? I don't see them, Subro.
So can we have Deborah's slide, Rakesh? Yes. Are you able to see that, Deborah?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. Can you just make this full screen, please? I'm requesting the back office to make this full screen. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. So I wanted to take you through the eProtocol review process as we do it at Stanford. So of course, there's maybe some consultation or preparation and, really nailing down what you want to do for your research project. And it takes anywhere between, it doesn't usually take 2 weeks. It usually takes somewhere between 3 days and a week to fill out all the necessary information on the eProtocol form, and then it is submitted to the IRB. It's assigned to a panel. We have 8 different panels for medical research here at Stanford. And then usually it is returned with comments before it sits before the full committee. On average, for a full protocol, it is returned an average of about, I'd say, somewhere 1 to 2 times. For chart reviews, maybe 1 time. Expedited or exempt reviews, only usually once. If it's a very complicated review, it may go more trials than that. Everything is documented really well in the system, and it's really easy to track where you're at in the whole comment cycle and answering all the questions that the IRB has before the IRB committee even meets. And then, of course, we get the final approval, and then everything is there on the document. I'd say it really has improved the amount of the timeliness of which things are approved. It used to be back in the paper days where we were getting 6 review cycles, and it was taking quite a long time. It was taking 2-3 months to get something approved through the IRB for a regular protocol. Now, on average, it's taking somewhere around 4 weeks for a full protocol and about 2 weeks for an exempt or chart review protocol. So it is really improved that. So it also helps us to keep up with changes that are required by our governments in terms of what is expected of our review committees. Next slide, please. So when I go on to this, it's called eProtocol. This is what my dashboard looks like. You can see that there's a place to create new protocols. There's a place where protocols are in process. Action items are for things that when I'm creating the protocol and haven't sent it in, it will be in the that top section, and also returns from the IRB with comments that need to be addressed are in that action items. And then my active protocols would be in the next section down. It's very easy to open them. I just click on the protocol number and the protocol will open. And if you would go next slide, please. So we have a navigation bar that's on the left side. You'll see it on the next screen. And it goes over a lot of different components that are important in terms of creating the eProtocol. There's the personnel who are involved in the study and making sure that they have the correct kind of training in order to be involved in the study. We use something called CITI and for our GCP research. There's a general information, participation population. Are you using any participant populations that are like students, or are you using healthy volunteers? Who are you using? Where is the study located? Stanford covers both entities at Stanford Hospital, Stanford University, as well as the Veterans Administration Hospital in Palo Alto. So there's several different locations. And then there's the general checklist, the funding, the resources, the protocol, which we'll go into next, the obligation, meaning that you are agreeing to what you are saying you're doing. And there's a nice little thing to check to make sure that your whole protocol is complete. It will go over and see if there's any missing fields. And then the event history, which is very, very useful. If you have to go back to prior versions, it's all there. If you have to go back to prior versions of informed consent documents, it's all there. It's all laid out. And even when you have finished with a protocol and have told the IRB that you're no longer active using that, and then it's kept in your history section. So if you go to do another study that's very similar, you can do a lot of copying, and it's very easy to do modification. Next slide, please. So this is what it would look like in the meat of the protocol application. You can see on a regular protocol, there is 16 tabs. They go over from the purpose to who you're doing, what kind of radiation exposure you might have to your patient population, what risks are there, what are your inclusion and exclusion criteria. This, and 13 is where you put your informed consent. There's additional tab for what we call HIPAA, and which is the Health Information Protection. And on 16 is where you put all of your other stuff. So if you have a grant and you want to put that information in there, if you're using, let's say, surveys, all the surveys that you're going to use in your study are going to go into 16. So everything is there. One other thing that I should say about this is it's a really good system if you have multiple versions going of your informed consent form. And it makes it so that the researcher that's using it, instead of just copying it over, because we have to, for regular protocol, have to renew every year, that we're using the correct form, the one that's been reviewed by the IRB. If there's any changes, that one is there, and that we're using the correct form. We're not just reflexively using what we've made 100 photocopies of. So that is the end of my slides.
Great, thank you, Deborah. I think you've given a great insight of how the system functions in Stanford. And one thing which is a take home from here is, you know, it is a one-stop destination that you kind of enter it, and then you kind of get to see what's going on with the protocol, and then you have the response, you have the questions coming in into the system from the IRB, and then you keep on responding. Great. So we will come back to you as the session progresses. At this point of time, I would like to have a poll, and may I request the Quinary team to give the poll question number 1. Let's understand, you know, we need active participation from the audience as well. So can we have the first poll question to be polled in? And then we will have our rest of panelists join us. So, so the first poll question is, based on the discussion or maybe the mindset which you have right now, do you think that the digital EC submission approval review will help you to facilitate your work effectively? You can respond within the next 20 seconds, and our team can actually show us what the audience feels in general, which can help us, the panelists, to understand which way the audience is thinking. Please vote. And once we are done, I'll request the Quinary team to pull up that beautiful slide for us if we can, with the audience responses on it. Yeah, I understand that we've been told that the people on YouTube will not be able to, because we have a live streaming going on for YouTube, because we had a massive, massive response for this. So we are not able to accommodate all the people, but we have a live streaming going on at YouTube. So I'm sorry, we will not be able to take your responses from YouTube, but the people who have joined through the Zoom link are able to put this. So if the Quinary team is ready, we can show the graph. Okay, so we already have a majority of the panelists which say that, they believe that it is going to facilitate the functioning of ethics committees based on what Dr. Thatte and Deborah kind of discussed about
Subro,
what.
can I just say
Yes,
something about this?
yes,
We
absolutely,
have
ma'am.
only 21 responses out of
Right.
almost 200 participants. I really genuinely wish the participants respond more. If we
Yes,
don't make it interactive, we lose a lot of charm
absolutely,
of this whole effort.
absolutely,
So my
absolutely.
urgent request to everybody to please participate. It's again very easy. So even if you're an ethics committee member who thinks this is difficult, it's not really difficult. So just
Right.
click on yes, no, or maybe.
Maybe. So I think we have a sizable portion which still is maybe, though it's 23 responses, but I think there is a portion which believes that is maybe. So maybe we will discuss on what the issues are. And as Sarah mentioned, if you have queries, questions to our people, our panelists, you can go ahead and put in. So in the interest of time, because we will be having this webinar till 12 o'clock, we will be having discussion between panelists. And here I would like to bring in the first panelist, Dr. Chirag, who's been the head of clinical operations for Sanofi for many years. Dr. Chirag, as a sponsor, what do you think are the major concerns of a sponsor for using Digital Ethics Committee? Do you think there are any concerns, if at all, it comes to your mind?
Thank you, Shubro. Very important question here. Digital ethics committee, and we spoke about it. Dr. Thatte very nicely elucidated the advantages of it, even Deborah. And I completely subscribe to that thought that yes, this is the way forward. The basic concerns of maintaining confidentiality, no cross talks between two protocols or even between two sponsors also. So I am presuming that whoever is the player will be taking care of it. Any person who's coming out with these will be taken. So these are very basic concerns which I'm sure will be addressed. The challenge that I foresee is as we go across, and we've seen this in many fields here. As the field picks up, there are many players who offer these solutions. I would request each one of them to be having those standards which need to be there, the minimum standards. Otherwise, what will happen? No? There'll be many players, and if there are people who don't give all what that is given, should be given, probably we'll have somewhere some substandard work being done or so. So that is where I foresee as a challenge. So everybody should maintain certain standards, and maybe as we evolve, probably there could be some minimum standards. Like today we have those data management, the CDISC, and all those standards that have evolved now. Likewise, we may have some standards for that as well going forward, and it should so happen that everybody is there. Number two,
Great. Yeah.
number two is if you see,
Chirag, can I
yes,
interrupt
Mm.
over here?
yes,
You
madam,
did
certainly.
mention, and I strongly recommend that we should have standards, but can you tell me, are there any standards available?
Yeah, I was coming to this very
No.
important thing which he mentioned. Yes, Chirag.
So we have to develop one. There may not be none, because see, this is a new thing for all of us. When we had ECRF done probably 2 decades ago, or even more than that, uh, we didn't have those. I mean, many people were hesitant to adopt ECRF then. It was more
Hmm.
of no, we will do paper, we'll continue with it. But then as we evolved, as people saw the value of it, along with it, the standards also evolved, and that's where I mentioned about the CEDAW standard. So maybe for this, it's time that we all get together and we learn from our past, that we should not take many
I
years to
would
develop
I would
standards.
strongly recommend ISCR to come up with a
For
document.
sure, for sure.
Absolutely.
Really, because I don't think anybody else will be interested.
To
And
do
I
the
Yeah,
think we
standards.
should put together some people who you can do
true.
this, Chirag, you're the
For
president
sure,
of ISCR.
for sure,
And we
for
need
sure.
this because I'm not sure it will come from any regulatory agency. We can
Mhm.
talk to ICMR to partner with us if necessary. But
Sure,
I think ISCR should take this on.
sure. And
Uh,
I will take this as an action point coming out of this webinar for us, and we will form a small task force and we'll take this forward for sure.
Excellent. I want to bring in Deborah here. Deborah, are there any standards in the United States? Because you've been doing this for 17 years. So where do we get these standards? Can you guide us?
Yeah. So in the United States, the Department of Health and Human Services really is the driver of patient confidentiality and ethics, and how the ethics committees meet and who has to be on the ethics committee, and that part. But there's also the part that's the institutional part. So if the institution itself is responsible for the e-protocol and the IRB, creating a way that you have a very safe, encrypted computers that everybody is using. So you cannot, do research at Stanford and put any information on a non-encrypted computer. So it has our computers at Stanford has a lot of software on it that protects, and so that when we send things, and we're not sending, of course, IRB, we're not sending patient information directly unless there's a serious adverse event, but that is driving that part. So there's this institution part, and then there's this larger part for research as a whole, and again, that's being driven by our government.
Okay, so the other thing I would also like to highlight here is the HIPAA guidelines, which actually kind of take care, but what we were looking for is standards with respect to what can come within these digital ethics committee functioning. So I think definitely, as Professor Thatte mentioned, Chirag, the ISCR can take a leadership in this country and do this for the Institutional Ethics Committee in India.
Sure.
Absolutely. I would like to bring in Tapan here because Tapan is from one of the pharmaceutical majors who have worked on the Digital Ethics Committee. And, Tapan, can you please share your experience? Did it ease your interaction with the site when you worked with this Digital Ethics Committee platform? Tapan.
Yes, absolutely. So, first and foremost, the time that it saved was enormous. Because if you just look at the time it takes to create a dossier and compiling that entire dossier and then shipping that to the site, it's a time-consuming process. It takes away nothing less than 10 days in just doing that. And you also find errors. You need to do QC because an external vendor or somebody is printing and compiling all of these things together and then putting together many copies. It's quite possible that something did not happen properly, but in electronic format it's an absolutely easy thing. One person sits and uploads the files at the right place and it lands exactly at the right place. It's like an email. As long as you get your email address right, it's only going to go there. There's no way it's going anywhere around. So the time that it saved was enormous for us.
I think we lost Tapan there. No worries. We'll come back to Tapan. I would like to move ahead with Priyadarshini.
Can I
Priyadarshini.
just
Yeah.
add one
Yes.
thing? Can I just
Yes.
add one thing over here, Subro?
Yes.
I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
one
Please.
of the advantages of electronic ethics committees and electronic dossiers is for archival. One
Archival.
of the one of the comments that we had got when we underwent SIDCAR accreditation in our institutional ethics committee at KEM Hospital was about the cobwebs on the files that were sitting in the cupboards, and we were all the time searching for place. Bombay, how Bombay is. It's
Yes.
worse than Tokyo. So there's no place there. So we just didn't used to have place to archive, and we were constantly at the dean's feet to prostrating ourselves to request for place. And I think this electronic keeping records has become so easy now that it has genuinely become a big advantage. And it's also easy to search for something. And the software that I mentioned, EEC,
I
that
sorry,
allows
I
you to generate reports, and it does a lot of things on its own. So I think it's something that we all have to really think of.
Right, ma'am. Yes, Tapan, I think we
hi,
lost
sorry.
you. So, yeah,
Yeah,
no problem, Tapan. You can continue, but I'll just make a comment to what Dr. Thatte said. Madam, whether it is Bombay or it is Calcutta or New Delhi, I think Priyadarshini will echo the thoughts that, we don't have place to keep our records. So, whether it is PLS Hospital, KEM Hospital, or Batra Hospital, we are always running behind the management to give us some space. And they would say, we rather will put a couple of beds there rather to keep, we'll not put your records. So, over to you, Tapan. You
yes.
were
So
talking about number one is you mentioned about the errors are less, and then anything else which comes to your mind which
yes,
worked.
the sheer speed of it, you
Speed.
submit and it's gone immediately.
Okay.
Second thing, it gives you a complete track of everything that's happening at any stage. So
Right.
different parties involved, who is logged in at what point of time and what sort of communication is happening. And another very very interesting thing that anybody who is into clinical operations knows is a serious pain, and that is reconciling documentation. So when you are looking at from audit or inspection readiness point of view, the investigator and ethics committee correspondence is an extremely critical piece of evidence,
Mm-hmm.
that the trial was conducted in the right manner. And over a period of time, you have so many of these correspondences that you can really be lost in this file. And in digital format, because you have a complete trail of it, there's no way you're missing. A paper can be lost, or pulled out from somewhere and you don't have a track of it. But if you simply look at it, you have complete trail of all communications, all submissions, all notifications, every approval, every acknowledgement, and it's clear. So you are able to reconcile against your trial master file with absolute ease for any future inspection. Now this is, for me as a sponsor, absolutely critical and saves tremendous amount of my time. And
Mm-hmm.
this is in addition to the time that the site staff is going to save. The investigator, and having a person just to look at the dossiers and carrying everything and giving to the ethics committee is a nightmare. And besides that, if you look at for ethics committee also, it's so easy to carry out their conversation because they can simply present it wherever they have to, looking at their screen. Secondly, the text is searchable. Today, if you were to find out an information and in a paper document, which is like running into thousands of pages, it
Mm-hmm.
is it is merely impossible unless people were to spend like hours and hours on that. But here you simply search and you get what you want to do. So that clearly reduced the timeline for
Got it.
approval as well.
Got it. Got it. So, Deborah, I'd like to ask you, do you think audits get facilitated? You face FDA audits on a regular inspection, on a regular manner. Do you really think that Stanford's audits were facilitated with the help of the e-protocol system?
Um, Good question. Thank you. Yeah, I think at Stanford that the protocol system absolutely has helped. That it is our previous speaker was saying, it's reconciling all of your documents. They're all there. Your whole email trail is there, and what version of the document you're on, especially as I said, for me as a study coordinator and a research manager, it's really important to use the correct version of things. And so it really does help with the system, to reconcile all of your documentation. So when you're working with a sponsor, that they know what they're at. And also, with sponsors, when you are doing pharmaceutical trials, there's modifications that happen to protocols all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And it's a very easy system then. And I think it makes it very easy for the IRB to see where the documentation, because when I change something in a Word file, I'm tracking document changes, and then the IRB can easily see that and can easily make a comment on it and an approval on it. So I think it really speeds the process up also. Yeah.
Great. So I think time is money in pharmaceutical industry, and the pharmaceutical majors are going to love the protocol system because, as they say, they're going to facilitate and speed up the process. So Priyadarshini, now coming to you, because you're an ardent academician and you kind of have done a lot of research. Recently presented a paper which won you an award. Congratulations for that. So Give us some experience on, what do you think are the inhibitions at the site, because I am also working at the site of using this. First, I would like to ask you about your research experience. What was this paper all about? And then your personal experience of using the Digital Ethics Committee at your site in New Delhi. You you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you so much, Subro. So we conduct a lot of academic studies, very big multi-centric academic studies, which goes up to 7 to 100 centers. Uh, so when we run these academic studies, um, we have to, we don't have the funds that like the pharmaceutical have it, because these are all very like academic based, and then the timelines are so important to us. So what we saw in this study is that what we did is our study started in the month of February, and this includes around 70 hospitals in this country, but we collected the data about like 50 centers from the 50 centers, and there were about like 13 questions through which we surveyed this entire this thing report. And what we looked into it, like points like what are the types of dossiers they are still asking for, like the soft copies or the hard copies, or the combination of that, and also the timeline it took from the first submission to the ethics committee meeting, conduct of the meeting, and also to the approval. So we looked into all these parameters, and then what we found is that till now 70%, 75% of the sites are still asking for hard copies. So which is a very big finding, which I wanted to present in a forum, because that was the idea behind that. Because this is something we need to tell the community, that we all need to work together, and we cannot we cannot take so much of time for all these things. And at this point, when we have a huge pandemic burden, how can you ask for like hard copy dossier? 75 of the sites have asked for hard copy dossier. So which was a big finding which we presented. And also the timeline of approval, it took from 1 month was a minimum timeline, 10 month was the maximum timeline,
10
and
months.
the average was 3 months. So
Okay.
what Tapan and Dr. Chirag and all said, like even for academic study, it's a huge burden, because we don't have that much of timeline, we don't have that much of funds, and it's like a huge issue. So these are some of the things we saw in that research, the survey that we did in my participating centers, uh,
Great.
and
So
I
I think
think
3 months is huge. I mean, the intent of the study is already gone. Madam Thirty, do you really think, as an academician, if you are waiting for an approval to come for 3 months, what is the first thing which comes to your mind? How do you motivate yourself to get these studies going on? Because it's very, very, because time is also very, very essential when it comes to publishing research in
How do
the
you
research area.
motivate? How do you motivate yourself is a very difficult question to answer, Subro, because I think motivation and the urge to want to serve on an ethics committee is something eternal. And
Mm-hmm.
when you are serving on an ethics committee, according to me, it's your primary responsibility to promote ethical research rather than to stop any kind of research. And especially in an era of the pandemic, it is research which helped us go forward. And I know that in my institution, for example, we had so many COVID related projects, because we're a very major institution in Maharashtra, and obviously people will come to us, and a good site also. So many studies were there that my ethics committee met even twice a month if necessary. But
Mm-hmm.
this kind of attitude comes only with the urge to do service.
Right.
And I don't know if that can be generated. I don't know. I really don't know. I would like to know from the audience if this can be generated in people. I don't know. I'm not a social scientist also. So I really don't know the answer to this. But I do believe that it needs to come from within. And like I feel that ethics is something that comes from within. It doesn't, you cannot put, like you can put band-aid laws. Ethics comes from within. You are either ethical or you're not.
True.
And therefore, I think that personally, if you're serving on an ethics committee, it's absolutely and straightforward your duty to review things in time and return the comments within a reasonable period of time. Now, this is said in all guidelines that reasonable period of time you should review and return the comments. You don't have to approve it immediately. You can always make your comments. You're welcome to raise. You have a lot of powers as an ethics committee, but don't review it just to stop somebody else. You
True.
should review it to promote ethical research, to make sure that the participant is protected.
Right.
And I think you can do that in a given period of time.
Great, ma'am. I think Deborah has a point there. Deborah, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. So one of the things that Stanford has done is separate out the scientific review committee from the IRB, our institutional review board. And the institutional review board is more for the ethics, protecting the patient, making sure the patient is not receiving more risk than they need to with the design of the study. But for the scientific design of the study, we have an outside committee. It's usually within the department, each of the departments. And I think it's important that that feature gets separated out, which from what I'm hearing, and I guess I have a question, is that the case in India?
Yeah, so
no, I want to talk about this because there is, unfortunately, in India, a lot of ethics committees are still doing only scientific review. They don't do ethical review much. They still do only scientific review. They need to move on to doing ethical review. But if you see the comments that come, they're all about the scientific component of the protocol rather than about the ethical. Even though all sorts of efforts have been made in training people and in talking about ethical review, etc. But a lot of it is scientific. And if you separate out two committees into scientific and ethical, then it just means one more
committee
one more committee to process, so there's even more time taken. Like Priya said, it took them on an average 3 months. It will just take on an average 12 months for the whole protocol to be approved. So, Madam, I think it's difficult. Yeah,
Madam, I think it's an important... I think it's an important point, though. I really do, because I think that, there's this fear among researchers that somebody's going to see your protocol or hear your protocol or stop your protocol for political reasons or whatever reasons. And by being able to separate out those, so the people that are reviewing in the scientific review committee at Stanford are your peers in your department. And so there isn't that kind of conflict that's going on there. And so then, as I said, then the IRB is really just there. It's really to protect the patients. It really is. And that's its whole purpose.
Yeah, just to add to Professor Thate, what she's saying, and I think Priyadarshini will echo this thought, that, the Diploma of National Board, DNB, postgraduate body in India, which trains postgraduate doctors in India, they insist of having two separate committees. So like in Peerless Hospital, in my hospital, we have a scientific committee, which is of course the senior members from that department who form it, and they review only the scientific aspect of it. And then once it's approved, it then goes to the institutional ethics committee of Peerless Hospital. I'm sure it's the same at Batra Hospital and other institutions who are running the DNB courses. And I'm made to understand by my friends in medical colleges now, and I think Professor Thate can add that information much better, that even the NMC currently, or the MBBS, MD-MS curriculum wants a separate scientific evaluation to be done for the academic projects now. Where we are stuck and where the bottleneck is, where I think Tapan and Chirag also kind of highlighted the fact, is for pharmaceutical industry, this kind of demarcation does not exist, that you kind of insist on a scientific review first for a pharmaceutically funded project, and then you proceed to an institutional review board or
In my
institutional.
experience for pharma-sponsored studies, scientific review of the protocol is really meaningless because they rarely take any comments that come up from an ethics committee.
True.
Most of the time, the defense is that the DCGI has approved this protocol, so we cannot change it now. So please live with it. This is how it is. And
Right.
otherwise, then otherwise we are pushed, if we really think it's extremely unscientific, then we are pushed to not approve the protocol. It,
Yeah.
moves to that extreme. But
Great.
that may happen if it is really seriously some problem that may harm the participant. So if bad science is bad ethics after all. So in a way, Deborah, I think the ethics committee has to review the science also. So in a way, that is, I think, part of the game. But I do believe that we can do this within a given reasonable period of time. It's just a question of commitment and focus.
True. True. Sitting in 2019 December, we would have never imagined we will be having digital meetings. If that is the kind of,
No, we wouldn't have.
you
Really, we wouldn't
imagine.
have, because I remember in the discussion during the writing of the ICMR guidelines, much of, I mean, I was generally advocating that we should allow, if a member is unable to join, they should come there through Skype or something. That time, I don't remember if Zoom, etc., was there, but it was Skype that time which was active. So, but it was, sort of said no. They said no, we have to encourage people to meet face to face, and they have to meet physically, and they have to be present, and they have to discuss face to face, and only then that meeting is valid. But today, that's why I read out those guidelines. Today, those guidelines themselves say that virtual meetings should be encouraged, because that's the only way. And according to me, these virtual meetings are fantastic, because the virtual meetings that the DCGI has been having with the SEC, I think
Hmm.
it's fantastic. I think Tapan was talking about these yesterday
Yes.
in the preparatory
We are going
meeting.
to come to that, ma'am, but we're going to move quickly to Rakesh, who is actually the executive director of Quinary. And we want to ask Rakesh, what is Quinary doing in facilitating digitalization of ethics committees in India?
Thank you, Subro. So, in terms of digitalization, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, yes, you are
Okay,
loud and clear. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. So, in terms of digitalization, we believe that digitalization means submission, review, and approval of applications altogether. Number one, at Quinary, we are focused on digitalizing the ethics committee because we believe that the ethics committees are an important stakeholder in the life cycle of clinical research. And if we enable them in working them effectively, in reducing their time, focusing on what key role that they can play is what we are focused. So we have digital platform which helps ethics committees, not just ethics committees, but the research organizations, CROs, and sponsors who can use them and make a comprehensive end-to-end applications review till the study closeout related documents. We enable wholeheartedly, and especially with new NDCT rules coming in 2019, this becomes more, responsible for ethics committee that they are enabled with process. And this is where our mission is, Subro. That
Great. So I think so people can log on to your website and get more information on that. And I think we have Priyadarshini here who has kind of used your platform. So I'll quickly bring in Priyadarshini here. Priyadarshini, what were the advantages of using his platform? Where did you find it useful? Where there's some concerns of using Quinary's platform?
So it was like a blessing in disguise during the pandemic time, because like Tapan and all said, you have a lot of responsibility as an operation head. You have the responsibility to clear the clinical trials, and then you have the responsibility to look after the DNB programs, which you had also mentioned. I have around like 150 students, in our hospital. So you can imagine the load that I get every month. If I don't do one meeting, and again, we have to break up this into scientific review board and then again to ethical review board. And then it's like a huge meeting task, and then the pandemic giving you the other issues like no staff. I had to sometimes pick up the
Absolutely.
staff, send my car, and like it was like there were like a lot of things. But then yeah, so as I said, Quinary was like a blessing in disguise. So 4 months we were not able to conduct the meeting, despite we had all the the guidelines and all in place. And this is a reality that I want to tell you all. And the load of 4 months was huge on me. And like, so when I found it, I did not even test it. I said, I told my team, please go ahead and do it. Please
Hmm.
use this platform. And then the first after 4 months we did the first ethics committee meeting, and since then we have been doing it every month, our ethics committee meeting. And I think we all, it was good because as I said, this platform is not at all tough to use. It's very easy. The submission process is very easy. Like you have very few what do you call, few system in this. Like you just submit all the documents. Even the sponsors can directly put all the documents in on the platform. So that is
Hmm.
the great part about it. And then we just have to give in the login and ID to the members for the review, so they can
Hmm.
go through the review, the documentations, and it's very easy. Like mainly my ethics coordinator says that this is very easy to handle it, ma'am, and they really love the platform. I think any platform should give that ease.
User
And
friendliness.
yeah, user friendly, and that is what we found. It doesn't have too many technicalities, like the various, like okay, the PI needs to go there and then put the comments or something like that. It doesn't have all those things. This is what I liked about this platform. And I think it's very easy and very useful. And the other part which we should all also look into it, that it is not cost effective, which is a very important point. It is not at all. It's like the charges are very less in it. Rakesh
Hmm.
initially did like for free for me. He's like, just use it and do it. So it was like kind of like, you don't have to worry about like during the time, that to discuss with your finance team or to the management about the cost and all also. So
Hmm.
like it was
So
very
we're
easy.
getting a very good positive feedback about that, and
Yeah.
I want to bring in Tapan because Tapan is a sponsor representative. Tapan, are you able to give in your insight? Because one important thing when we worked at Stanford, we did not allow the sponsor to kind of enter into the e protocol, and Deborah is actually agreeing to that. I'll bring in Deborah after you. So but this digital platform by Quinary allows sponsors to put in the ethics committee submission. So, can you discuss about how this helps or does not help you?
Uh, so see, first and foremost, what it does is that you can do everything with uniformity. So as a matter of fact, the dossier submissions are done by the sponsor, just that somebody at the site receives and gives it to the ethics committee. But the fact is that the dossiers are compiled by the sponsor and then dispatched via courier. Here you are simply submitting that at one go, and then it reaches at the right place. So if I think of it from a regulatory standpoint, there's absolutely no prohibition that the regulatory agency anywhere in the world had about this. So the issue is that if the sponsor is able to directly communicate with the ethics committee in a manner that can affect their decision making or influence their decision or their review, that is where the problem is. But you just submitting by yourself, I think it's much better, because instead of you have multiple different ethics committees, multiple different sites, and you go on doing that same activity for 10 different people or 10 different sites for one particular study. Instead of that, you're going to be able to kind of link it from one to other and then do it at once. It's far more easier.
Mhm.
I think it saves
So,
a lot of time and effort.
so when you are saying, I'm just seeking clarification because as a member secretary, I would not like my sponsor directly coming and contacting me. Is the submission made via the sponsor and it reaches the PI and the PI forwards it to the member secretary? Is that the flow, or is it directly that the submission will reach the member secretary or the ethics
No.
secretariat from the sponsor?
So there are both the possibilities. So let's say, for example, when you have uh, this multicentric studies with one centralized ethics committee kind of a concept, where you may do it that way, and that was happening in India earlier also. But otherwise, you dispatch the whole dossier, the investigator receives that, puts up a cover letter and then submits, and then goes to the ethics committee. So there is no direct link or a correspondence between the sponsor and the ethics committee, although it has transparency in a manner of speaking where your dossier is at this point of time. Is it still with the investigator, or has it now reached the ethics committee? That is what you can see. But it's not that the sponsor is directly going and submitting that to the ethics committee.
Okay. Madam Urmila, do you think, because you are, you are the expert here in terms of guiding ICMR as well, do you think there could be a conflict of interest from the sponsor's direct interaction?
In general, it is not. See, I'll tell you the reason why I don't like the sponsors uploading directly.
Yes,
Personally,
ma'am.
that's because then that means the investigator doesn't even read it.
Okay.
And that I have objections to that, because the investigator is finally responsible for the patient, and the investigator should be able to see. You know what, I've seen many investigators just faxing the query letter to the sponsor, and then the sponsor answers the query letter, and then the investigator just submits it to us without even having read what the sponsor has written in that answer, in that query letter. I think personally that, and therefore, if the sponsor submits the protocols directly, I would have serious objections to that, because of that. That
Yeah.
the investigator who is doing the study should at least read the protocol,
So
read the process that is involved, and we don't know how much they know and how much they actually do. And these are
yes,
serious problems that I have with many investigators.
I completely agree, ma'am. So as a sponsor, and I'm sure Chirag would agree with me as well. So we as sponsors also absolutely certainly want that investigators are at the forefront of entire thing and actually are at the driving seat, taking everything together. So we are in a state in India where the sponsors are even required to draft a cover letter for submission to ethics committee. So that's a very different issue.
Yeah, so therefore, if the sponsors are generally encouraged to directly communicate with ethics committee, what are the PIs doing?
True, true.
Yeah, so right. So the system is to create the dossier that anyway the sponsor is compiling, paper or electronic, goes to the investigator, and then the investigator is supposed to review, make a cover
Yes,
letter, and then make the final submission to
yes,
the ethics committee. So that is the
yes,
process that we
yes.
had in this system.
Yes, so
So
at least have that investigator make
yes,
that collection of the material. At least he knows what documents are
What
submitted,
documents are
even if
being
he
yes,
submitted?
hasn't read all the documents. He knows
yes.
what documents are submitted because it's written in the cover letter usually.
Right.
So I mean, you can't change behavior by insisting on something. According to me, again, this comes internally, and if the investigator is not doing it ethically, then there's very little you can do about it. But I feel that encouraging a sponsor to directly upload onto the website, it gives him access to the software, which I find genuinely problematic, because for example, in my ethics committee software, I don't share my password with my students at all, because I'm a member also. So they should not access my site, you know. So
So
I
those
don't
are
share it. So people share passwords. And then if a
no,
sponsor
you can't.
knows a password and it's shared, then how are we going to protect this confidentiality?
Confidentiality.
I really worry about this.
So Chirag, I think, yeah, Chirag wanted to make a point. Yes, Chirag. And then we'll go to Deborah after this. Yeah.
Yeah, so for sure, there has to be a separation between the investigative ethics committees and the sponsor. Each one of them has their role. To Madam Thatte's point here, completely understand that the investigator needs to be involved. But if I see there's also one more gate check, that the investigator is supposed to present the protocol to the ethics committee, or is there when the ethics committee meeting would be there to answer any queries if the ethics committee has. So obviously that itself, the process itself is built in such a way that the investigator knows what's there in the study or what's there in the protocol, or what are the things involved in the trial. So probably there's already a gate check built in. So even if, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm advocating this, that okay, the sponsor should directly say, but we have gates which will help us ascertain that the investigator is involved. So that may probably will help. And just we all know that Indian GCP guidelines does say the investigator slash sponsor can make the submission to the ethics committee. So it does give that provision in the Indian GCP guidelines at least.
Great. So I think, Chirag, your point is well taken. I'll bring in Deborah because Deborah mentioned that there are a lot of pharmaceutically funded projects going on at Stanford. So how do you ensure, Deborah, that, this kind of communication is going on between the PI and the IRB? What are the mechanisms of check, which are there at the Stanford IRB?
Well, first off, if you're only using Stanford IRB, the sponsor cannot directly upload anything. It has to all go through the study team, the research team. So and the final check on that is that if you had noticed on the page, the last page I had shown, that there's an obligations. And the PI is responsible, and it says what the PI's responsibilities is in terms of the whole protocol and the whole process. That's not to say that Stanford never gets involved in outside IRBs. We use what's called a single IRB, which can be a general central IRB for a large number of projects. And often it's encouraged from sponsored pharmaceutical projects, but it's not necessarily given. Oftentimes we will tell our sponsors, no, we really want to do this on our own. But even in the case where we do use a central IRB, like the WIRB, which is again, the single IRB, central IRB, they can upload documents, but they cannot submit. And it's really up to there's a lot of PI responsibility even within that section. And then even if we go ahead and use a single IRB system like that, we also have to file locally. Now it's a much smaller filing, and it really depends upon what single IRB you're using as to they need certain letters that guarantee this process and this accountability for the PIs.
Sure. So we'll move ahead and we'll have the next poll question here. May I request the Quinary team to kind of bring in the next poll question, and so that we can have some. And I again like to echo what Madam Thate is saying. Please participate. There is no right or wrong answer here. We want to have you. We want to understand that you're still with us, listening, actively listening, and trying to. So, what are the three main challenges you foresee in adopting a digital EC at your institute? So, and I would like to make a humble request that the ethics committee members, the principal investigators, and they should answer this question. Students should refrain from answering this question because we have a sizable number of students who are attending this. So I request the EC members from different parts of the country who are attending, the principal investigators who are attending, to answer this question, please. And once we are done, maybe we can just pull in some data and take our discussion to the next level. So I expect some people to respond at least, so that we can understand that you're still with us. So till the responses come in, I think I'll go to Deborah. I think Deborah, I'd like to bring in here is what are the challenges of using an EC, E protocol? What do you think are the challenges? Because you are a mature system, you're very mature, and we are still in infancy. So just tell us, what are the challenges?
So the biggest challenge is because of the way that the whole ethics committee gets the file on the protocol and everything that you've submitted, the comments can be a lot when you get them back. So after your submission, it's not unusual to get back 36 comments on areas that they think that you need to correct. And Dr. Subra there does this too well. I don't know how many you got your first time, maybe 40 something.
40 comments. And I was like totally devastated. What is this coming? Okay. So,
yeah. And I had to tell him that that's not unusual, especially for a neophyte in the system where you don't know all the language that they're looking for the IRB. So it's not unusual to get a lot of comments back. It goes to the point,
is
though,
it because
that
they get a lot, Deborah, is it because they get a lot of time to review? Because usually when they are coming in paper format, people don't tend to review that in depth. So is it because
right.
the people are getting a lot of time to review?
And one of the other panelists mentioned, because it's in electronic format, you're able to actually go and look in certain sections and really kind of delve and look for certain wording. And so I think they could do find commands and say, hey, this is, you don't have it. It doesn't say Stanford encrypted computer, whatever it is, that's a problem with it. Most of the changes are small, but it just actually shows that all the ethics committee members are participating, and then it's compiled into a single document. And so it can be a little overwhelming for both the PI and for the research coordinators when they get back that many comments. So that one's a little bit hard.
Right. And do you anticipate anything in terms of the functioning that, the software might not function properly, you might get logged off, or your system might not function as you would expect it to? Has that ever happened?
That's a great question. I think that that at Stanford, at least part of the life of a CRC is spent dealing with IT issues, not necessarily issues with the e-protocol itself. E-protocol has been very, very robust. There's a lot of backup systems. The IT is really robust in terms of that. And and the system will log you out if you aren't, doing things on it actively too long. But it's a smart system, and unless they bring it down for doing maintenance work, it's been very robust. And so we're blessed at Stanford. I mean, maybe because we're in the Silicon Valley and we have such smart people, working on these problems, that that system has not been a problem. And
Thank you.
But there's local problems, right? With your computer.
Local problems, computers, and then, getting a lot of review comments. Priyadarshini, any issues which you kind of had, or comes to your mind, which were challenges while using digital ECs?
Well, I did not face any challenges till now. I think it was quite smooth. And the only challenges were, like, I think, like all of them said, Madam Thate also mentioned that, some of the senior people, I do have some people who are quite old, in the committee, and they were not very tech savvy. But then we kind of like requested her that, we can speak to one of their children, and, the daughter helped us very well, and, how to review, open those documentations, and, like also Zoom meetings, because that is the platform for review. But also you need to have the Zoom meeting, you have to be tech savvy, all these things. So it's a combination of all these things. I think it's all about how you facilitate, the things. Yeah. So there were challenges like this, but then other than this, there were no such challenges. There were questions raised on the what do you call, like, which we all are raising in using this platform, how secure is the system, which is very important. The committee members raised to me many times these questions like, Priyadarshini, are you we are okay, using these? We have some very big pharmacologists and, in there, and then they were like, not this thing, because it's a digital, its recording is there and everything, right? So they asked, but then I said that, yes, I have testified it, and, I think they're very secure. We don't have, we have a very secure system. So all this were provided by Rakesh to me. And I think Rakesh can talk more about that,
Sure,
rather than, yeah.
Yeah, I'll come to Rakesh. Rakesh, yeah, thank you, Priyadarshini.
Can I just come in over here, since you're
yes,
talking about
yes, ma'am.
challenges?
Yes.
I think one of the important challenges is about training the investigators to be able to upload correctly. Because many of them, it took us a while, but we needed to train all our investigators to be able to upload in the way that the software needs, because there are a lot of investigators in KEM and we needed to train them. That was one thing. And the second issue that many people have been facing is the stability of the internet.
Stability of the internet,
Yeah,
yes.
and the
yes.
third challenge which I have found, and which was very sad, in fact, is that one young fellow who was a member of our ethics committee, not an old person, young person, refused. He withdrew from the ethics committee saying, I cannot work with the software and I cannot work on using this kind of soft copy review. Therefore, I'm resigning. He resigned from the ethics committee. Can you believe this?
Oh my God, okay.
A young fellow. So it's again, I want to re-emphasize, and this is very important for all ethics committee members who are attending over here, is it's about a mindset. If you have a fixed mindset which is not open, which you just don't want to consider this progress in terms of moving towards a digital ethics committee, we won't get far. But I think we need to change this mindset and keep our minds open. I think we can really achieve a lot.
Extremely important, extremely important. Chirag, yes.
I want to just bring in a pointer about the mindset, and we've got more than 300 attendees on this webinar now. I want to ask, how many of us visited our bank branch in the last 6 months or 1 year?
Well, Rakesh had that question in the poll, and I asked him to remove it because that would have a direct conflict of interest. But then I have responses for poll question number 2. Can we have the responses? Can we have the responses and have a look at that? Question number 2, please. The responses for question number 2. Okay, so we just had 30 responses. Again, I think not many people participating. And leading the list was confidentiality of the data, which was the main concern, and followed by resistance to change. And what Madam Thate has been saying, that, mindset, it's all in the mind. You got to take it out of the mind, followed by integrating multiple systems, and which is a very essential factor. So I'll come to Rakesh on this. Confidentiality of data. Rakesh, what is Quinary doing about confidentiality of data? How do you ensure confidentiality of data being preserved on the Quinary platform?
So, I mean, this is the single most question that comes to everybody's mind, that you are sitting somewhere and we are submitting all the questions, all the documents to you, how secure your platform is. So first of all, our platform is in SaaS mode. Those who understand, it is a system. This is a cloud-based services which is hosted on the Amazon server, and it is considered as considered as one of the safest server in terms of health, health data. Number one. Number two, uh, between the server and the individual hospitals or a EC or a CRO, when they are communicating, this is through the website, and this is secured through. Uh, you will see in many of the. You can see in the poll now. If you see from here, what is displayed, it is HTTPS. That S is for the security, which is encryptions. So when you see a website which is not with S, there is a less of security features. The chances of attacking on them is higher. If you look at to our website or a hosting on the platform, it is secure. Number three, our platform is individually assigned. It is isolated, which means that each individual stakeholder has their email address and the password, which means you can track clearly. And needless to say, our platform is 21 part CFR compliant, which is a basic requirement for any platform to use. So this is how we ensure that there is a security. Also, if you look at to the database point of view, there are layers, and how somebody can access to data. There are policies and process available, so really that who logged in clearly. So this is how we ensure, and with the basic background from the sponsor CRO, what are the typical questions that will come from sponsor CRO when these platforms are used is very well taken care. So this is how it is a comprehensively making sure that there is a ease of operation, but there is a robustness on the security, confidentiality being given by this platform.
Right. So I think the other important concern is also integrating multiple systems. And I think what Priyadarshini clearly mentioned is the smooth passage in what she used as a user from one system to the other system at the Quinary thing. So in the interest of time, we're probably reaching the end of discussion of panel. We will have the last 30 minutes dedicated to many questions. I see a lot of questions being asked, and I would like to kind of start those. But before we, kind of go to the audience question, I would like to ask an important question is, cost. Cost is a very important factor, deciding factor. Is how does it affect, Priyadarshini, at your end, I would like to ask you, what do you tell, you talked about cost effectiveness, you found this to be cost effective. Can you explain more about this? How do you assess cost effectiveness for these kind of protocols or these kind of digital platforms?
See, as I said in the beginning, the charges are very minimal. It's about like, per submission, they are charging about like 10,000 K,
Mm-hmm.
10,000 rupees INR.
Mm-hmm. And does it need to be paid by the institution, or the sponsor pays it as a part of the budget?
So Rakesh gave me two options. So he said that, either, you can directly, tell the sponsor, we can talk to the sponsor and then, do the charges. But then it's always good that I take the lead, like as an operation manager. So I took the lead and I said, it is more about, the timeline. The sponsors, I don't think I charge about like 50,000 per submission. This is my charge of EC review fees. And I think adding that 10,000 was acceptable to the sponsor. So when I did not have any issue, as I said, financials are very important,
Yes.
And it was not an additional kind of burden to the institution also. So I didn't have to take any approval. So it was very easy for me because the sponsors were ready to. And then, also during this time, I had a lot of proposals from the vaccine studies, the BCG trial and, a lot of things. So I think the timeline was more issue than the financial again, but then yes, financials are very important. But as I said, the Quinary gave us a very good options, and I think adding 10K is nothing, during this time. It's more about,
the time,
going through the time
fastness
and
of doing it.
Yeah, and
Can
also
I ask one question, Priya?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
What about
please.
non-sponsored academic studies? Because
Yes.
you have a lot of academic studies for DNB, etc. You charge 10,000 for them also?
No, ma'am. They don't charge for the academic trials.
So the company doesn't charge, means Quinary doesn't charge you?
No, ma'am. They don't charge for the academic. But yeah, so if you want to use it, Rakesh, what was this thing? I don't sorry, I don't remember this thing.
Well, we will not go into those nitty-gritties.
Let's not go into those details.
I think this can be discussed on a one-to-one basis with interest, if people are interested, with Rakesh. But then I think this is a time to acknowledge, and very importantly acknowledge, the EC members across this country and in the world who have been working in this very difficult situation and ensuring that the ethics committees function and facilitated research across the country. So I, as an ISCR member, would like to acknowledge the role of the EC members who have worked day in and day out and facilitated clinical trials in COVID-19. So let us all, I think, acknowledge the very important role which these EC members across the world have played, and especially in a country like India, where we do have different challenges which were mentioned right now, internet not functioning, people not being technologically savvy. So hats off to the EC members who have been doing this for a while. We will go to the first question, and the first question is directed to Professor Urmila Thatte. Madam, Mr. Deepak Sharma is actually asking that functioning of Digital Ethics Committee, would that be acceptable in the DCGI audit, if an audit happens? Will that, or the regulatory audit, will that be accepted?
Yes, because we are I can only say about NABH accreditation because our ethics committee is accredited by NABH and they came to review only DCGI approved studies. We've never been audited, so I don't know the answer to that. But I don't see why not, because this has been presented to the DCGI's office and they accept this, but they cannot second it, as in they haven't said that. I don't see anywhere in the LDCT rules that you can have a digital EC. But I don't see if they can, they have a digital platform, right? Sugam is there, they have a digital platform. So I don't see why they should not approve. ICMR has now approved digital platforms.
ICMR has approved digital platforms.
Because you saw the
Yes,
COVID
the guidelines.
guideline.
Absolutely.
The COVID
Chirag wants to make a point. Chirag, please, and then
Yeah,
we'll go to Rakesh. Yes.
let me put it up that way. They see NDC, the new drugs and clinical trial rules, they do not prohibit, they don't specify that there has to be a physical meeting or a physical submission only. As far as the principles mentioned in the regulations are followed to the core, changing medium from a physical submission or a physical meeting to a digital meeting should not be. Even the subject expert committee meetings are happening virtually now, right? So I don't see it as an issue, and it can pass that DCJ inspection muster as well.
Absolutely.
Till the time you
Rakesh.
followed
And
all those points.
as I said, that it was in fact appreciated by the NABH assessors. You are an assessor, so you would
Yes.
know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely, ma'am. And NABH is very clear about traceability and the traceability of the documents. And
Yes,
as long as it is
in fact,
as
that is why it was much appreciated by
much
the
appreciated, ma'am.
NABH
Much
assessors.
appreciated. To
So,
answer the question, definitely NABH is going to accept it. The Chirag has made a point. Rakesh wants to make a point. Rakesh, over
Yeah,
to you.
so when we interact with the research centers as well as hospital, this is a very common question that we get it. That is this platform approved by DCGI? And we, in a hindsight, feel little smiley because DCGI generally does not approve when we use our ECRF or IPRO or IVRS. There is no approval required. So similar way for similar platform, there is no DCGI endorsement that is required. As far as there is a trail, as far as there is a process which is established, and as far as there is a SEC SOPs which are modified, if you can build up the trail, there is nothing like that.
Absolutely.
yeah, and
Chirag. Yeah.
also, I think like what he said is very important, Rakesh, that it should be there in your EC SOPs, and I don't see what there is that the DCGI or anybody will disapprove of. As he rightly mentioned, there's no approval process in place.
Chirag, you had a point?
Tapan wanted to go first, so he has
Yes,
been
Tapan.
waiting. So
Tapan,
yeah.
go ahead, please.
Yeah, so if you look at from regulatory standpoint, in fact, even in India, in majority of the multi-specialty hospitals, you have electronic medical records and your clinical trial data on those electronic medical records. So as far as the data integrity is ensured, it's not a problem. So the any regulatory inspection, whether it is DCGI or US FDA or your EMA or anybody walking in, they look at that. Okay, is there guarantee that your data have integrity, and then they followed all the necessary regulatory requirements. And so long as you can prove that, it's fine. So just because it's a digital system, it's not a problem. So in fact, even to the DCGI, a lot of our submission happens electronically only. So it's not just the application that happens electronically, but even the marketing authorization applications also happen electronically now.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're accepting electronic submission to determine the sanctity of the drug to approve it in the market, the ethics committee submission and approval documents and correspondences being in electronic format, there's no question. All of our sponsors have electronic trial master files, so the repositories are electronic in nature, and you have 21 CFR 11 compliance get assured, and then there's no problem with that.
Great. So, I think Tapan also made this point very clear yesterday that the subject expert committees are all functioning very efficiently. Even the central ICMR, Institutional Ethics Committee, is also meeting digitally and they have everything on digital platforms. So that's very clear that we don't have a complete no for this. There's another question, which is again, I would first begin with Professor Thate answering this, and Professor Thate also kind of highlighted this at the beginning of the discussion, is that one of the one of the audience members feels that there is a need for separate code analogous to Nuremberg code to be drafted for digital ethics. I think what I could interpret is that standards for digital ethics committees, which is essentially required. So, madam, your thoughts on how we can go ahead. You already asked ISCR to do it, but then if you can mention few areas which these standards should capture on how digital ethics committees should function in India. Dr. Urmila Thate, please. Maybe I'll,
My
yes,
internet
ma'am.
was giving me trouble.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah,
Sorry,
ma'am.
please can you repeat your
Yeah,
question?
ma'am.
My internet
Question is,
was
one of our audience
yeah,
member
very
is
much.
actually asking that there is he who goes on to mention that a separate code or maybe guideline just in the same sync with Nuremberg code, does it require to be drafted for digital ethics, for digitalization of ethics committee, how they function? So what are your thoughts on this?
Nuremberg Code is about ethical conduct of research. So all everything digital ethics committee or any other type of ethics committee will have to follow with the Nuremberg Code or any of the other codes. In India, it will have to be the ISCR guidelines, which anyway follows the Nuremberg Code or any other code. So no, I think, and that's what I requested Chirag to do, is we will have to come up with some guidelines which is specific for digital ethics committee in terms of what needs to be looked at and what needs to be ensured. For example, the confidentiality and about the firewalling of places so that an investigator doesn't see what is going on in the ethics committee or the sponsor doesn't see what is going on in an ethics committee. The confidentiality involved in the meetings, there were a lot of worries because if you remember at the beginning when Zoom started, there were a lot of in WhatsApp University, a lot of misinformation about the issues of Zoom meetings, etc., about recording and about how it is hacked and about all these things. So we had a genuinely difficult time to decide the platform on which to do these things. So there are a lot of issues apart from just the software of how to do the meetings and to ensure confidentiality and everything. So I think those guidelines we will really have to work on, Chirag, and I genuinely request you to take it seriously because I think if this is the way we want to go forward, and I believe we must go forward in this way, then this is the time to come up with the guidelines.
Absolutely. Chirag, you've answered this, but then, definitely we look forward to your leadership to kind of draft this and take this forward in this country because we definitely need a helping hand on this thing. And I think the
And we
industry.
can talk to ICMR
Yes, ma'am. And
because
I can definitely say that whatever my discussion has been with Roli Mathur, who is the head of bioethics at ICMR, she is very, very positive about the digital ethics committee functioning because she has actually seen the advantage of using this for her central ethics committee at ICMR. I would like to bring in Deborah here for the next question and then bring in my Indian experts. Is Deborah, Harish Rangareddy has a very interesting question, and this is on the IRB membership. It says that, ethics committee may require someone with deep knowledge of artificial intelligence and technology. Do you think it's really required to have a member in the IRB who has knowledge about the artificial intelligence or, data integrity, confidentiality, so that the digital ethics committees or the digital IRBs function more efficiently?
I'm not sure I can answer that, Subra, because I am not on the IRB. So in terms of that question, is the question asking, do you have to have an AI member on the board?
AI member on board, because we be using a lot of platforms, and then sometimes these platforms, the confidentiality, the integrity issues, whether how, so you need a check on the board as well.
So I don't know if you need a person actually on the board that fulfills that role. If we're really talking more of an IT issue in terms of the integrity of the data that's getting to the IRB, I think you do have to have somebody who's entirely dedicated for the whole platform, that is their role, and that they are maintaining the integrity of the system. So I'm not sure if that answered the question or not.
No.
And again, at Stanford, we separate out the SRC for the ethics. So the question, if it's about doing research using AI, that's a different question.
Okay, got it.
Can I answer?
Yes, please, ma'am.
To my mind, an ethics committee member should be more aware of all the other guidelines, not about AI. You don't need AI to run this software. I'm not familiar with the Quinary software, but the other one that I'm using,
Not required.
We don't need to know. We don't even need to know the programming behind it. It is terribly easy to use. It is meant for idiots like us, who are computer idiots, to use it. What I would like my members to know is the ethical review, the risk-benefit assessment,
I would say something in response to something you said earlier, Madam Tate, is that training and support, both for the user of the platform as well as for the IRB board, is crucial for this kind of a platform to work very well. So we provide a lot of training online, but we also provide additional support help. There's a help button while you're doing the protocol where you can get help from a member of the committee, the education committee that's part of the IRB. It's a whole separate division within there, but you also need to get the support and the training for your IRB members when you're especially making a large change like this. As I said, we did not try to make this as this change overnight. It was a 3-year process for Stanford, and part of that was to train all the members on the boards how to do this and how to use this platform. It was, sometimes for the IRB boards, it's a little difficult making that transition, but I think with the right support and the right training, you can do this.
Great. So, transition requires time. Yes, Chirag.
So we can build in a lot of analytics. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of players will be there who will be building in analytics to track their time, the submission, the quality of submission, etc. That's where AI could come into use there to make the things and the processes better. But otherwise, there's no need of an AI person onto the board here, is what I think.
Absolutely correct. I also echo the same thought. Tapan, yes?
Yes, so you may need an AI person only if you are using a technology to collect some medical data and you want someone to kind of comment the sanctity of the data collected. Like, for example, if you are collecting ECGs digitally and analyzing them digitally, and the ethics committee needs someone for that study as an expert to say that, is this like really giving you authenticated data? Then you have some expert sitting over there, because that's about the study itself. But to run the system, you don't need a person on the ethics committee board.
Absolutely. I think the next question is for Rakesh. Rakesh, are there any training or help desk available for each ethics committees for this dashboard? The dashboard which we are talking about, the Quinary dashboard. How does the ethics committee member gets trained while using it?
So there are 2 ways, Subro, that is done. Is one, when the registration is done for the member, there's a training. And second is, even based on our experience, even if you are trained in the registrations, until unless when the real protocol is reviewed or when you actually have to do some work based on your role, we gave a hands-on training to make sure that there is a personalized training, because we understand, as Dr. Urmila was referring to, most of the time we have senior citizen or super senior citizen in the ethics committee. So it's like our parents and grandparents who are sitting, and we personally take care, make sure that there is a customized language-based training given to the people. There also been planned with the videos that self-explanatory, but again, those ethics committee member who have a difficulty in logging and accessing, and that apprehension that videos may not work, so that personalized touch will be the initial solution, and then they get interest and they self-train themselves, they become comfortable with that.
Okay. And we in interest of the time, we have to close. I mean, you just have 12 minutes more ticking. The clock is ticking by very fast, but then we will be actually, closing the session before we have one final comments from all the panelists. And I would like to kind of sum up and then hand it over to Sarah. So I'll begin with Professor Thatte. Madam, your final thoughts, maybe one take home message from every particular panelist on digital ethics committee. Is that the way forward in India? What are your final comments, ma'am, starting with you?
The way forward is a digital ethics committee in my mind, because we also want to be environment friendly, and there's no better way to reduce paper use, and it's a waste of paper to have so many copies and such huge dossiers to be distributed. It's best is to go software, soft copy based, and DCGI also allows for soft copy records, although he does insist on one hard copy also to be kept. So only for DCGI sponsor studies, we insist on hard copies. All our students' theses are only in soft copy based
Okay, ma'am.
systems. I
So
must
this,
add one thing, that we
yes,
have
ma'am.
one sec, just one thing. We have 3 institutional committees in my institution, and all the 3 of them also work in their own silos. So there is no sharing of data between these 3 committees also. So about confidentiality, I think there is absolutely no doubt, no problems. And so if you ask me the question, is it the way forward? The answer is yes. And the most important take home message is, please keep your minds open and please consider these um, newer methods, which are not really new anymore, but still there will be challenges, but we can overcome them.
Thank you. Over to Deborah. You've been our international guest. What do you think? What would you suggest the Indians to do?
I would say don't be scared to make this change. I think it's a good change. It's, give yourself time, give yourself training, get yourself in a mindset to understand that this is a good thing. And in terms of, for everybody, would had to keep doing research during COVID. Excuse me. The quick modifications were a blessing.
Thank you so much. Chirag, one last take home message from your end.
Digital ethics committee is definitely the way forward, and I agree with what has been said earlier. One thing that has to also remain is the principles behind the ethics committee review. While the medium of submitting, reviewing, deliberating on it, giving reports, all is changing to digital, the ethical principles which need to go into research should not be compromised during these reviews. And that's what I would want to request and urge all the ethics committee to maintain those high standards of ethics review.
Thank you. Tapan, over to you. One final take home message.
Yes. So, it's not just about ethics committee in every part of our life. Wherever we can replace paper with digitalization, it's critical. And as far as ethics committees are concerned in clinical trial, the size of our dossiers are so large that if we do not embrace digital, and listen to me carefully, people, if you do not embrace this digital platform, the future generations will hold us accountable for that, for killing the environment and then raising the carbon footprint like this, because we are doing no good by using paper like this.
Priyadarshini, one final comment.
I request all the research institutions and the stakeholders, important stakeholders, to please adopt digital ethics committee. And we need to be a responsible citizen of this country, and we need to work very hard together. And also during this time, we all have to work on a lot of important vaccines and studies, drugs. So please consider, digital ethics committee, and please adopt it. I would just say that much only. And this message is to all the stakeholders. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Final thoughts from Rakesh. One take home message.
So if you want to be compliant when you have an inspections, and you don't want to have those sleepless nights, it is important that, we use these platforms, and because otherwise we may get some unwanted publicities, by getting that 483s and warning letters. So, and we want to make India sign, and India can do better. So why not embrace this going forward?
Great. So it is my great privilege to kind of sum up the discussion before I hand it over to Sarah. That, we had a great discussion. Thank you, panelists. You've been just awesome. And thank you, Professor Thate. Your guidance has really taken this discussion to the next level. Thank you, Deborah. Your insights from one of the best institutions in the world has really helped us understand that it's time and patience and training which can help us to kind of move to the next level. And India is doing that. So I think what we discussed, and thank you all the panelists. Thank you, Chirag. Thank you, Tapan. Thank you, Priyadarshini and Rakesh for sharing your experiences and talking about the challenges as well as the opportunities. The panel firmly believes that, digital ethics committee is the way forward in this country. We should keep our minds open. We should adopt new methods because change is the only constant which is going to be there. We should not be scared of accepting technologies. We hadn't been scared of accepting technologies, this particular webinar would not have been possible. Give yourself time, train yourself out, because that's what we learned from Deborah today, that when they transitioned in the United States, which is one of the most technologically leading country in the world, they took time for 3 years at Stanford too. So let's give ourselves time and give us some good training. We have to have the principles of ethics review in place rather than dilute that when we are moving to the digital platform. We have to be accountable to the next generation. Wonderfully said by Tapan, and I completely echo his thought. Our next generations have to have this environment in place, which we got it from our previous generation. And we have to be responsible citizens, as Priyadarshini echoes, that we have to be citizens, not only promoting research, but also promoting ethical research in India. And finally, compliant to the regulation, and Digital Ethics Committee can put a tick mark to all these requirements which the panel wants. With this, I would like to end today's deliberation discussion. Thank you, ISCR, for this wonderful support, and thank you, Quinary. Over to Sarah for the closing remarks. We have few questions I see which we were not able to answer in dearth of time, but I assure you that the Quinary team will discuss this with the individual panelists and get back to you on your individual email IDs. Over to Sarah. Thank you.
So, good afternoon, all, and thank you, Dr. Subrajyoti, for facilitating the event wonderfully. And I take this opportunity on behalf of ISCR and Quinary to thank each one of you who have stayed with us till the end. And it is very important to have your valuable feedback. So please do not forget to give your feedback so that it will help us in organizing a better, even better webinars in near future. And kindly note that certificates for your participation will be shared with you shortly. And as mentioned by Dr. Subrajyoti, your unanswered questions, we are very happy to get back to you through your emails. And I once again thank all the panelists for giving your time and enlightening us on this topic of digitalization and giving us a way forward. Thank you once again and wish you all a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shabro. Nice moderation.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everybody,
Bye-bye.
bye bye.